a Stoic reflection on approval, identity, and coming home to yourself. You weren't born to be everyone's favorite version of you. But somewhere along the way, between the apologies you didn't owe, the yeses you didn't mean, and the masks you wore just to keep the peace, you forgot. You started shrinking your truth to fit someone else's comfort. You started chasing approval like it was purpose, and slowly, piece by piece, you began disappearing. Stoicism doesn't beg you to be liked. It reminds you to be whole, to return to the one person you've been abandoning in the rush to be enough for everyone else. You. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Epictetus. Let them misunderstand you. Let them judge what they don't know. Because the moment you betray yourself to gain their applause, you've already lost the only game that matters. If you feel this, even a little, pause. Not out of guilt, but out of self-respect. And if something in this moment made you blink a little slower or breathe a little deeper, this space is for you. We're not here for the algorithm. We're here for the quiet ones, the overthinkers, the peacekeepers, the people-pleasers trying to come home to themselves. So if this landed, even softly, like this post, subscribe, leave a comment, support this little corner where silence becomes strength and truth finds its voice. Let's unlearn the noise, together. Lesson 1. Pleasing everyone is the fastest way to forget who you are. It starts innocently. You say yes when you mean maybe. You laugh at the joke that didn't land. You stay quiet when your soul is begging you to speak. You shift your tone, your truth, even your values, just a little, because it feels easier, safer, less risky than being misunderstood. But here's what no one tells you. Every time you do that, you trade a piece of yourself for something that won't last. Approval. And the more pieces you give away, the harder it becomes to remember what your voice even sounded like in the first place. She liked you when you were always available. They praised you when you never pushed back. They loved the version of you that never needed anything. But what about you? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The approval of others is a distraction. Not a goal, not a requirement, a distraction." Stoicism doesn't teach you to become hard or emotionless. It teaches you to stay grounded in what's true, even when it's unpopular, even when it means disappointing someone who only loved you for how easy you were to bend. You're losing yourself trying to win everyone else. And the cost? It's not just exhaustion, it's identity erosion. The longer you wear the mask, the more natural it feels. Until one day, you're not sure if the voice in your head is yours, or just an echo of what everyone else trained you to be. So stop. Even if it's messy, even if it's uncomfortable. Start saying what you mean. Start reclaiming what you gave away in pieces, your time, your boundaries, your truth. You weren't made to be everyone's favorite. You were made to be whole. Lesson 2. Not everyone deserves front-row access to you. The truth is, not everyone should get the best of you. But when you're constantly trying to win everyone else's approval, you start giving away your energy like it's infinite. You make yourself endlessly available, emotionally affordable, and painfully agreeable. You hand out front-row seats to your life to people who barely show up for you in return. And somewhere in that process, you stop asking, do they actually deserve this much of me? She texts at 2 a.m. and you answer. He flakes again and you forgive. They cross boundaries you didn't even realize were there because you never set them. You keep showing up, explaining yourself, proving your worth, chasing validation like it's survival. But Stoicism teaches us to be more intentional with our presence. not just our performance. Epictetus said, "Know, first, who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." In other words, be selective with your soul. You're not required to be emotionally available to everyone who knocks. You don't owe full access to people who only show up when it's convenient for them. Protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's wise. It's stoic. You're not a free trial version of yourself. You're a whole human being. And the moment you stop giving access like it's a clearance sale, you'll start finding your way back to who you really are. Lesson 3. You can't be chosen by others if you keep abandoning yourself. You want to be chosen, wanted, understood. That's human. But here's the twist. In trying to earn that from others, you start abandoning yourself first, hoping that if you become more likable, more flexible, more of whatever they're needing, you'll finally be enough. But there's no peace in constantly reshaping yourself just to fit someone else's mold. No freedom in being everyone's favorite, but your own stranger. She didn't fall for the real you. She fell for the version of you you thought she'd want. He liked how easy you were, how agreeable. They stayed close because you never challenged anything. But then slowly, you began to disappear. Not on the outside, but inside. You lost the spark, the voice, the knowing of who you really are. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And when your every thought is about how to be loved instead of how to be whole, your soul takes on the color of fear, not freedom. The way back: choose yourself first. Speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. Show up fully, even if it's inconvenient. Let the people who don't align fall away, and let that feel like healing, not loss. The goal isn't to be chosen by everyone. The goal is to stop unchoosing yourself. Lesson 4. Saying yes to everything is just a quieter way of saying no to yourself. It sounds harmless at first. You say yes to plans you don't want, conversations that drain you, roles you never asked for. You smile, agree, stay late, show up. You tell yourself, "It's not a big deal," or "They'd do the same for me." But slowly, each yes chips away at something: your peace, your time, your identity. And every quiet yes to others becomes a loud no to yourself. Stoicism teaches us to live by what we value, not by what others expect. Epictetus said, "Only the educated are free." And what is emotional education, if not learning to say no, not from bitterness, but from boundaries, from self-respect? When you say yes out of guilt, fear, or habit, you're not being kind. You're being absent from your own life. You're stretching yourself thin to fill spaces that were never yours to begin with. And then you wonder why you're so tired, so resentful, so disconnected from the things that once brought you joy. She didn't ask you to lose yourself. They didn't demand your whole soul. But when you offer it up too easily, people will take what you give until you have nothing left. Every time you say no from a place of love, you're actually saying yes to something deeper: peace, clarity, self-alignment, and maybe for the first time in a long time, you. Lesson 5. When you're always performing, you forget how to simply be. There's a quiet exhaustion that comes from always being on, from constantly managing how you're seen, from walking into rooms already rehearsing how to act, what to say, how to keep things light, likable, safe. At first it feels like self-awareness, but eventually it becomes self-erasure. You're no longer living, you're performing. And in chasing everyone's applause, you lose the only audience that actually matters: yourself. You weren't born to be an act. But when your worth becomes tied to how well you're received, how little you rock the boat, how many smiles you collect. You forget how to just exist, how to be messy, honest, real, whole. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." And the irony, so many people live their entire lives liked, but never known, praised, but never seen. That's what happens when you mistake acceptance for identity, when you start shaping yourself to fit into places your truth has outgrown. You are not put here to impress the world. You are put here to be freely, fully, unapologetically. Lesson 6. The more you prove yourself, the less you trust yourself. Let that sink in. Every time you feel the need to prove yourself, to over-explain, over-give, overcompensate, you're silently telling yourself, maybe I'm not enough yet. And the more you do it, the more that thought embeds itself into your identity. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Epictetus said, if you want to be respected, start by respecting yourself. Not performing, not proving, just living with quiet confidence in who you are. The more you chase external validation, the further you drift from your own center. And over time, you start outsourcing your worth. You wait for the text, the compliment, the reaction. You need their approval to feel okay. And in that process, you stop trusting your own instincts. You stop hearing your own voice. You're losing yourself, trying to prove yourself. But what if there's nothing to prove? What if your value isn't something you earn, but something you remember? When you start trusting yourself, everything changes. You stop over-explaining. You set boundaries without guilt. You say less, but it carries more weight. You become steady, rooted, stoic, not because you don't feel, but because you no longer need someone else to tell you who you are. So take a breath, let go of the performance, and start coming home to the version of you that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't explain itself to be worthy. You don't need louder proof. You need quieter trust. Lesson 7. If you always adjust the temperature, you forget what feels right to you. When you're constantly adjusting yourself to match the room, to calm the tension, to boost someone else's mood, to keep things light, you eventually forget what your natural setting even is. You become the emotional thermostat for everyone else, and slowly you lose touch with your own internal climate. You start living in reaction instead of in alignment. You walk into a room and sense who's off, and you rise to fix it. You hold back your needs because someone else's seem bigger. You shift your voice, your vibe, your energy to meet the moment. And yes, maybe it helps for a while. Maybe it even keeps the peace. But after enough of those adjustments, you start wondering why you feel so far from yourself. Stoicism reminds us, know thyself. And knowing yourself requires hearing your own signals, not just scanning the emotional radar of everyone around you. You're losing yourself trying to be someone else's calm, someone else's comfort, someone else's caretaker. But who's taking care of you? When you always adjust the temperature for others, you forget what actually feels warm, safe, and right for you. Your preferences get blurry, your limits get pushed, your identity gets rewritten, not intentionally, but slowly, quietly. You're not here to adapt endlessly. You're here to live honestly. Lesson 8. Your worth was never meant to be measured by consensus. The world will always have opinions about you. Loud ones, quiet ones, conflicting ones. And if you make the mistake of measuring your worth by how many people agree with you, approve of you, or like you, you'll spend your entire life on a stage, waiting for applause that never really satisfies. You're losing yourself trying to win everyone else because somewhere deep down, You started believing your value was up for debate, that being accepted by the majority meant you were finally enough. But consensus is not confidence. Agreement is not alignment. And the moment you let a crowd decide your worth, you surrender your power. Marcus Aurelius said, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know who you are." And that's the core of it. Approval doesn't mean understanding. Praise doesn't mean connection. Sometimes it just means you've become whatever they needed you to be. But who are you outside of what people want from you? Who are you when the audience leaves and the room goes quiet? Because your worth was never supposed to be measured by how many people agree with you. It was meant to be remembered by how fully you stand in who you are. Lesson 9. You're allowed to be disliked and still be at peace. There's something terrifying about being misunderstood, especially when all you've ever wanted was to be liked, to be the one who keeps the peace, who brings people together. But here's the truth. Trying to win everyone will always cost you parts of yourself. You've spent so long trying to be agreeable, pleasant, easy to be around. You go quiet when you want to speak. You say sure when you mean not really. You nod when something inside you is screaming, "This isn't right." Why? Because the idea of being disliked feels unbearable. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Marcus Aurelius said, "So other people may praise you or criticize you. That's their business. You just keep doing your work honestly and calmly." And that's the shift. Understanding that you can be at peace even when someone doesn't like you, doesn't get you, or doesn't choose you. You're not here to win everyone. You're here to live with integrity. And sometimes integrity means people will misunderstand you. Sometimes it means saying the hard thing. Sometimes it means walking away quietly instead of staying to be the nice one. You're allowed to be disliked and still sleep well, still stand tall, still be whole. Lesson 10. You don't owe your evolution an explanation. Here's something most people won't tell you. Outgrowing things will offend people. Your silence will confuse them. Your peace might threaten them. And when you stop showing up in all the ways you used to, overgiving, overfixing, over-apologizing, some people will say, "You've changed." And they'll be right. You have. But you don't owe anyone a step-by-step guide to your growth. You don't have to translate your healing into terms they'll approve of. You don't have to shrink your new self to comfort those still attached to the old version of you. You're losing yourself trying to explain why you're no longer who they expect you to be. But the truth is, growth isn't always relatable. Some people only knew how to love you when you were hurting, or silent, or always available. When you rise, when you set boundaries, when you start speaking with clarity, they may not clap. They might pull back. They might ask, "What happened to you?" So let them be confused. Let them whisper. Let them miss the old you. Just don't make the mistake of going back to who you were just because they were more comfortable with that version. You don't owe your evolution an explanation. You owe it your commitment. Lesson 11. Not every version of you needs to be available forever. One of the hardest parts of healing is realizing that some people only loved a version of you that no longer exists. The version that always said yes. The one that never questioned anything. The one that carried more than they should have, smiled when they were exhausted, and held space for everyone except themselves. And when you grow, when you start reclaiming your time, your peace, your voice, it feels good. But it also comes with grief, because some people won't meet you there. They'll miss the old you. They'll make you feel like you owe them that version back. But Stoicism reminds us to live in alignment with our present values, not our past performances. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." And if it's no longer you, then you don't owe it to anyone. You don't have to resurrect an older version of yourself just because someone else refuses to meet the one you've become. Lesson 12. When you start choosing yourself, don't apologize for the silence that follows. When you stop chasing everyone, something strange happens. The noise dies down, the messages slow, the invites disappear. Some people stop checking in. You begin to feel like maybe choosing yourself was too much, too cold, too selfish. But that silence, that's not abandonment. That's alignment. That's life-clearing space for people who will meet you where you actually are, not where you used to be when you were constantly bending, fixing, proving. You're losing yourself trying to win everyone else. But when you stop, when you reclaim your voice, your time, your yes, and your no, the people who benefited from your self-neglect will fall away, and it will feel like loss, but it's not. It's just a shift from performing to being, from pleasing to living, from noise to truth. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And people's reactions to your boundaries, that's outside your control. Their disappointment in your growth, outside your control. The silence that follows your honesty, still not yours to carry. So no, you're not cold, you're not selfish. You're just done losing yourself in rooms that only saw your value when you were useful. You're not here to win everyone. You're here to come home to yourself. Lesson 13. Constantly explaining yourself is just another form of self-abandonment. At first, you explain yourself because you care. You want to be clear, to be understood, to avoid conflict. So you over-explain. You reword your truth so it's easier to digest. You soften your no until it sounds like a maybe. And you do it again and again, until your truth is so diluted, even you forget what it originally sounded like. You're not trying to lie, you're just trying to be liked. But somewhere along the way, your need to be understood starts costing you your peace, and that's where it turns. That's where it becomes a quiet form of self-abandonment. When you start shaping your words not for truth, but for approval. Stoicism reminds us, clarity is enough. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." In other words, let your actions speak. You don't owe everyone an explanation. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, "This is what's right for me." And then, say no more. Lesson 14. People can love you deeply and still expect you to stay small. It's a painful truth. Not everyone who loves you wants you to grow. They love the version of you that's familiar, the one who's always available, who doesn't push back, who listens more than they speak, gives more than they take. And when you start changing, even in healthy, necessary ways, it can feel like a betrayal to them. They say, "You've changed." They say, "You're different now." And you start wondering if maybe growth really is selfish, if maybe staying small was the price of being loved. But Stoicism challenges that guilt. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Your job isn't to argue for your evolution. It's to live it, to embody it. Even when people don't clap for it, even when people confuse your healing for distance or your boundaries for rejection, you're losing yourself trying to shrink back into the version of you they once loved. But that version didn't have boundaries. That version ignored their own needs. That version was tired, anxious, stretched thin. It's okay to outgrow relationships that only thrived when you were self-abandoning. It's okay if your evolution creates space between you and people who only knew how to love your brokenness. The ones who truly love you, they'll grow with you. Or at the very least, they won't ask you to dim just so they can feel tall. So keep going. Don't apologize for expanding. Don't minimize your light for the comfort of those still sitting in the dark. You can love people and still let them go. You can honor the past and still move forward. And most importantly, you can keep growing, even when it makes someone else uncomfortable. Because staying small for love isn't love. It's fear dressed as loyalty. Lesson 15. If you have to abandon your truth to belong, you're not really belonging. Belonging shouldn't feel like a performance. It shouldn't require a script. And yet too often, we find ourselves bending, shrinking, and reshaping our truth just to keep our spot at the table. We laugh when we don't feel joy. We agree to avoid friction. We nod along to things that quietly bruise our spirit. And little by little, the cost of fitting in becomes our authenticity. You're losing yourself trying to earn a place in people's lives who only make room for the version of you they're comfortable with. But true belonging doesn't come from blending in. It comes from being seen and still being kept. Epictetus said, "Seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourselves." That means the feeling of belonging shouldn't be built on how well others receive you, but how fully you've received yourself. If you have to silence your voice to keep the peace, it's not peace, it's self-abandonment. If you have to wear a mask to be accepted, it's not love. It's performance art. So take your truth with you. Even if it costs you some spaces, even if it means walking out of rooms where you were once the favorite version of someone who didn't really know you. You don't need to fit in everywhere. You just need to come home to yourself. Lesson 16. Your capacity to care doesn't mean you have to carry everything you feel deeply. You notice when someone's mood shifts. You remember the little things. You're the one they call when they fall apart, because they know you'll show up, no matter how heavy it is, and you do, over and over again. But at some point, your care turned into a burden, not because you're too soft, but because you were never meant to carry it all. You're losing yourself trying to be everyone's safe space, therapist, peacemaker, emotional anchor. And it's beautiful. Your compassion, your loyalty, your ability to hold people through their storms. But the Stoics would ask you, at what cost? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That includes realizing you are not responsible for everyone else's healing. You are not a human bandage. It's okay to care and still have limits. It's okay to listen and still say, "I don't have the energy for this right now." Saying no isn't a betrayal of love. It's a boundary that honors it. Because your ability to care isn't measured by how much you carry. It's measured by how well you stay whole in the process. Lesson 18. Trying to be everything to everyone leaves nothing for yourself. You're the reliable one, the one who gets it done, the one who remembers birthdays, who stays late, who checks in just in case. You're the emotional first responder for everyone around you. And it's noble, it's beautiful, it's exhausting. The truth is, the more you try to be everything to everyone, the less of you there's left at the end of the day. You give so much that when you're finally alone, you're not sure what you even feel. You've spent the whole day tending to everyone else's storms, and now you're left standing in the rain without even realizing it. Marcus Aurelius said, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" And when you live to meet everyone's needs before your own, you stop asking that question. You just react, you just give, you just go. And eventually, you lose your way. Not because you're weak, but because no one taught you that love without limits isn't love. It's a slow form of erasure. Because you deserve your own energy, too. And if you don't make room for yourself, no one else will. Lesson 19. People-pleasing is just fear in a disguise that looks like kindness. You tell yourself you're just being nice, that you're being a good person, that keeping the peace is just who you are. But deep down, you know, people-pleasing isn't just about kindness. It's about fear. Fear of being rejected, misunderstood, disliked. Fear that if you stop performing, the applause will stop, too. So you say yes, even when you're tired. You over-apologize for things that aren't your fault. You water down your truth so it doesn't feel too sharp. And they love you for it. Of course they do, because it's easier to love someone who never challenges anything. But what about you? Do you love you when you do that? You're losing yourself trying to be easy to love. But here's the truth. Being agreeable isn't the same as being authentic. And the people who are only comfortable with the version of you who never says no, they're not in love with you. They're in love with your compliance. So stop mistaking people-pleasing for compassion. One is driven by fear. The other is led by truth. Only one of them will let you live in peace. Lesson 20. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. The hard truth is, people don't always treat you how you deserve to be treated. They treat you based on what you allow. You think staying quiet makes you easy to love. You think being flexible makes you safe. You think tolerance is strength. But sometimes, your silence becomes a green light, a silent permission slip. And over time, you stop being seen as a person with needs, limits, boundaries, and start being seen as an option, a utility, a resource. You're losing yourself trying to avoid conflict. But in avoiding discomfort, you're accepting disrespect. And the more you tolerate, the more you teach people that it's okay to keep asking you to bend, even when you're breaking. Epictetus said, "A man should so live that his happiness shall depend as little as possible on external things." And how others treat you, that's an external thing. But what you tolerate, that's yours, that's your choice, your boundary, your line in the sand. You're not here to be endlessly accommodating. You're here to be respected. And that starts with what you accept. Lesson 21. You'll never win everyone, but you can finally stop losing yourself. Here's the thing. Even if you try your hardest, say the right things, show up perfectly, and give everything you have, someone will still misunderstand you. Someone will still walk away, and for so long, you thought that meant you failed. That if they left, if they pulled back, if they didn't approve, you must have done something wrong. But what if you didn't fail? What if you just finally stopped bending? You're losing yourself trying to win people who were never meant to hold the full truth of you. People who were only comfortable with the parts of you that didn't challenge them. And in that effort to be accepted, you've silenced your joy. You've buried your intuition. You've put your own needs on pause, waiting for applause that never comes. Marcus Aurelius said, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." That's where your power lives, not in being chosen by everyone, but in choosing yourself when it matters most. in standing by your own side when the world is quiet, in no longer sacrificing your peace just to earn a place in someone else's comfort zone. Start choosing the one person you've been leaving behind in the name of approval. You.
Lesson 22. You don't have to earn the right to take up space. Somewhere along the line, you started apologizing for existing. You shrink when you speak. You second-guess your opinions. You take up less space, not just physically, but emotionally. You don't want to be too much. You don't want to inconvenience anyone, so you stay small, safe, silent. But here's what Stoicism teaches. Your existence needs no permission. Marcus Aurelius said, "Do not waste time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop trying to earn your place. Live it. Own it. Occupy it. You're losing yourself trying to be digestible for people who were never supposed to define your worth in the first place. You don't need to keep shrinking just to be easier to handle. You don't need to apologize every time you speak your truth or take a deep breath or ask for what you need. Because if they only love you when you're small, their love was never real. It was control. So stop waiting for permission to be here. You're already here. That's reason enough. Lesson 23. Approval. Feels good, but alignment feels like peace. There's no denying it. Approval feels good. The compliments, the likes, the "you're such a good person" validation. It hits. It soothes. It gives you a quick hit of worth. But it's temporary. And soon you need more praise, more affirmation, more proof that you're doing it right. And all the while, you drift further from alignment, from the quiet, grounded knowing that you're living in sync with who you really are. You're losing yourself chasing approval from people who are just as lost as you. People whose standards shift with every trend. People who celebrate your sacrifice but disappear when you finally draw the line. So ask yourself, not, will they like this? But, does this align with who I'm becoming? Because in the end, approval fades. But alignment, that stays. And it never asks you to lose yourself to feel whole. If you've made it this far, maybe something inside you has been whispering, "That's me." Maybe you've seen yourself in these words, tired from trying, stretched thin from saying yes too often, living like a draft version of yourself because you thought approval would bring peace. But now you know, approval is addictive, but alignment is healing. You don't need to become someone else to be loved. You just need to become you again. Not the overachieving version, not the always available version, not the agreeable, gentle, people-pleasing version. Just you, fully, boldly, quietly, unapologetically, because the only person who can truly win you is you. So let this be the moment you pause, not to scroll, not to move on, but to respond, not to me, to you. Leave a comment, not because I asked, but because maybe this time you actually have something to say. Say what part hit. Say nothing but a lock. If all you can manage right now is, "I'm unlocking something." Or say, "I see myself again," if you do. And if this space reminded you of who you were before the world told you to be something else. Then quietly, humbly, without pressure, tap like "Welcome back." You were never too much. You were just never meant to be everyone at once.